Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, depending on where you're at. I know that our Australian viewers, you're sleeping right now. I've been told it's 2 a.m. where you guys are. I'm assuming it's somewhere around 4 o'clock for our friends over in the UK. And right now in the Pacific Northwest, it is 9:07. And I want to welcome you to my podcast. My name is Dale, and my podcast is called Observer of Anomalous Objects. I'm so excited today because we have a special guest, a legend in the field of ufology, someone who's been doing it for a long time, in fact, for over 30 years. He's been involved in the citizen hearing. He was the one who organized and put that together in 2013. He runs and operates the organization Paradigm Research. And he also is Hollywood Disclosure Alliance, is something that he started recently. And so let me go ahead and bring in the one and only Steve Bassett.
I'll tell you, every time I hear that word legend, I just age another year.
Hey, it's a good thing. That's a good thing.
Yeah.
You got a little knowledge. Just wish you could go back in time and take all that knowledge to when we were younger, right?
Yes. Oh, yes.
All right. Let's go ahead and start with, we have a comment from Christy. Let me go ahead and put that one up first. And so Christine 41 says, Steve, what do you think? What technologies are behind the phenomena? How can this technology help humanity? How can the weaponization of NH technology be countered? Thank you for your answer.
There's all kinds of speculation about this, which is fine. I mean, obviously, the fact that the U.S. government has not confirmed it yet just keeps the beer on speculation. But for one thing we know, I think, with absolute certainty, is that these entities, which I'm pretty sure are extraterrestrial star-to-star beings, can have an anti-gravitic technology that allows them to maneuver essentially without rockets or aerodynamics, which is incredibly significant and useful. So they allows them, the anti-gravitics may be part of the reason that they're able to move as fast as they do. Because if you negate gravity, think about that for a second, you could probably maneuver around with a 9-volt battery if you zero out gravity. So that may account for it. But there's more to it, because we know that they can move without generating a sonic boom, without heating up the atmosphere, which is, again, something else. And so the technology of their flight within our airspace is quite extraordinary. So we know that that's for sure. Now, do we hack hands-on to that tech? Apparently we do. Now, a number of people have now confirmed what we've known for decades, that the United States has a number of crash vehicles. Ryan Wood wrote a book called Magic Eyes Only quite a few years ago, just updated it. I think he had 75 crashes with a certain amount of evidence for each one. How many vehicles do we have? Probably a minimum of 6, 7, 8, could be as many as 20, who knows? And that's just the United States. Hopefully few, if any, were shot down, but rather crashes. Don't know. But in any event, if we have those vehicles, then I'm sure we have done everything we possibly can to figure out how do they fly anti-gravitically. And there is evidence of craft operating in space, or in spaces, like above Area 51, for instance, going way back, that seem to clearly not be theirs, meaning the nature of the sighting and what's going on seems to imply that this is ours. So I think there is a very realistic chance that we have anti-gravitic craft. And that technology, if it was fully publicly available, opens up a host of very significant benefits, which I can go into if you want. So there's that. Now, the energy system of the craft clearly is not something that we use. It's highly unlikely. And so we would love to know the energy system. And of course, they've been, I'm sure, trying to learn that. Have they made success there? We don't know. It's a little, there's much less what we'll call hard evidence there, other than some testimony from people that say, yeah. And even if the energy system is something we could understand, it may not necessarily be a breakthrough, something profound. But there is more than enough reason to think that the energy system that is driving those craft possibly could be a huge game changer for us, for the obvious reasons: cost, pollution, and so forth. But at minimum, we need to know that. So if it's not, fine. We need to know that. That way we can put that aside and concentrate on how we're going to be able to supply the energy to the human race without destroying the planet in the process. And then there is a third area of technology, which is probably ultimately the most significant, but it's not on the table right now, and it's not going to be on the table until after disclosure. And that is the contact counts, that experience, which has been now put forward by thousands and thousands of humans, hundreds of thousands of counts, rather, which I'm sure a few are fake and a few are misunderstandings. But the idea that that vast body is a mistake or a lie or a misunderstanding is ludicrous. And that testimony clearly indicates genetic work on their part. And not surprisingly, it indicates extraordinary capabilities. And so there is the genetic technology aspect. Would that become available to us in a post-disclosure, post-open contact era? If so, it's hard to describe the impact that could have. I'll add to this that a few, not a lot, but a certain number of contactee accounts seem to refer to healings where someone is not sick, not well at all, serious issue. They're taken up, have a visit, come back, problem solved. Why isn't this common? Very possibly because the ETs essentially are doing it for a reason. In other words, this person, their health of that person is important, whatever they're doing. If it's not important, they're not going to do it. But it's just another hint. But it is common sense says that if you were to give us another 1,000 years of studying genetics of all life, just given how much we've done in just the last 40, the idea that it's perfectly reasonable to assume that we would probably be able to solve most of the major disease issues we have, extend lifespan dramatically. This is pretty serious. So these are some of the things I can say about the technology issue without getting into wild speculation. But I'm sure that there is more than we even know that could emerge in a post-disclosure, post-open contact era.
So those are some of the benefits that which is one of the reasons I know that you're fighting so hard for disclosure, and you've been doing it for over 30 years, is because of if this technology would become public, it could change our world overnight. Isn't that correct?
Well, there's also the fact that this technology is only being dealt with by a certain group of scientists and engineers who satisfy certain classification statuses or are working for the right agencies or working for the right contractor. There's 8 billion people on this planet. There is a vast intellectual resource out there that is completely shut off from this. What happens if that changes and this resource can be brought to bear? It could open up possibilities. It could advance the process. It's also the case that the potential for weaponizing it, if it's public, probably increases some. And that's a concern. But what can I say? Hey, a hammer can build a house. It can also be used by a serial killer. I mean, we have to learn how to not weaponize everything. But until we do, that doesn't mean we have to then not use technology that could change things for the better. That's just the way it is. That's a human nature issue. All right. But the risk of weaponization, I happen to think, is greater by maintaining this embargo. Not only on the part of the United States, but all the countries are basically embargoed this. Some more explicitly than others, but they've embargoed it. And so with all that secret stuff going on, everybody's suspicious of each other. Is there an ET tech arms race? Whatever. I think that the risk of weaponization is greater by maintaining it completely classified as opposed to getting it into the public domain with certain protections. I mean, it's not as if I mean, we know there's nuclear missiles, but the government doesn't post how to build them on the internet. So there's restraints that can be done, but all this science and tech has got to get out there so the human race can engage it as a civilization and not as a select group of people.
Well, let me go ahead and introduce you to a friend of mine. This is Dragonfire, and let me show you what he did for me. He gave me this icon, and I've been wanting one for months and months and months. And so, shout out to Dragonfire as well. And one of the things that he says in his comment, and I think you would agree with, I'm not sure how we would do it, but we need an immediate ban on using tech weapons. And it's like, wow, that's a great idea. I'd love it. Absolutely. But Steve, how do we implement that? That's the catch, isn't it?
Yeah. And we need peace on earth and a chicken in every pot. Right. Look, there are a couple major developments or changes that would get a lot of people off of anxiety medicine, recreational drugs, and God knows every other manner of mood-altering devices. But one of them is nuclear weapons arsenal. We have to zero them out. No nukes anywhere. Okay, we have to cease any research on weapons worse than nuclear weapons, and there's only a couple. One is antimatter weapons, which is actually being researched, which is the ultimate insanity, because if you actually figured out how to make antimatter a weapon, you could blow up continents. And then, of course, genetic disease-based bioweapons, which the right one could kill off 90% of the population of the earth. That's kind of bad. In fact, the bioweapons, frankly, as we get more and more skilled at this, and of course, we've gotten a big lesson in this recently, because there is clearly a connection between the recent pandemic and some of the gain of function research and other abilities we have in terms of modifying DNA and so forth. I think something got out. It may be a little of both, but the point is that we're doing incredibly dangerous stuff in these labs, and there's just not enough control. And so those two things, and then we'll add a third, weapons in space. We're gonna take the Cold War to space very soon. Russia's already talking about it. The Chinese have already talked about it. The Chinese even blew up one of their own satellites to show that they could do it. And then we brilliantly responded by blowing up one of our satellites to show that we could do it, thus creating twice as much space junk. That's the kind of stupidity that's still present. So these are just three things right there that if we could get, if disclosure could lead to those three things being brought under control, boy, there'd be a lot less anxiety in the world. But that is three things on a very, very long list that needs to be looked at. And to be perfectly frank, without disclosure, they're not going to get done. We're not going to deal with them. We're going to go forward with nuclear weapons development, advancement, and we're going to have a nuclear war. We're going to get forward with advanced bio and genetic weaponization tech, and we're going to have a massive pandemic that makes the last one look like nothing. And we're going to end up taking war into space, which just increases the risk of a nuclear war, because now you can cripple a country by just taking out a relatively small number of satellites, and that's going to be considered an absolute act of war, and somebody's going to launch a nuke. So these three things alone are within our reach, but only if we get disclosure. Without disclosure, there is not a chance in hell that any of those things are going to happen in my lifetime, certainly.
Okay, it's a good segue. I want to go ahead and play a video by Robert Bigelow, and I want to play this specifically for you because you've been working for disclosure for over 30 years.
28 to be exact. I don't want to make myself older. Right. It's actually 28. Right?
All right. I'm trying to make you older than you are.
Yeah, let's not do that. 28. I don't want to take credit.
But anyway, so you've been working at it 28 years. I was trying to remember exact, but I know it was close to 30. But anyway, and we're trying real hard now to get Congress engaged in this. But I want you to hear what Robert Bigelow had to say about Congress.
So, but the reason for President of the United States is that, and this sounds cavalier, but they're only elected officials. And I think we can see that we can agree, regardless of what party you belong to, if any, that we can't trust our elected officials. They lie. They're dishonest. We can't trust them, regardless of whether you're a Democrat or Republican or independent, it doesn't matter. That's the nature of the beast. And you don't have to look present day, but you can for that defect. So this subject is so serious, being above top secret, that they can't be trusted. Lifetime admirals and generals can, on par, on average. 35-year career guys and gals that are in it can be much more.
The one thing that kind of caught me, Steve, before you give your answer, is you can't trust our elected officials because they lie. And yet, what are those doing with the secrets right now? What are they doing to us? Are they not lying? And so is their lies better than someone else's lies? And the other thing he said, and I wasn't, and I like Robert Bigelow, don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to attack Robert Bigelow. I'm trying to attack the mentality. But the other thing he said was it's above top secret. My understanding is there's nothing above top secret.
Again, these are words. Fully, we don't have the detailed understanding of the exact nomenclatures and mechanics that are applied to this, because it's all, again, secret. Look, Bob's made some great contributions. His statement on 60 Minutes back in 2016 was very, very important. He is got a strong political bias. He's given millions of dollars to one of the parties or candidates and nothing to the other. But I understand what he's trying to convey. And there are a lot of people that feel this way. But I caution people about this. And so let me see if I can shape that. First of all, let's not forget one of the most important fables, the one that's one of the best known, right? That's many fables kind of fade away because they're not that applicable, but this one is never more applicable than today, and that is The Boy Who Cried Wolf. It's a very famous one, and you know what I'm talking about. The boy's he's out there, he's all by himself, he's bored as hell, taking care of watching these stupid sheep, and finally he just needs some attention, so he yells wolf, and the town people come, and they're all concerned, and he's getting attention. He likes it, so some time goes by, does it again, and they all come out and whatever, and so he's enjoying that, so he does it again. The fourth time, though, after a while, the wolves show up. A full pack of wolves show up, and he's screaming, "Wolves, wolves, come get it!" And the townspeople say, "Screw you! I don't trust you. I can't trust you, and so we ain't coming." And then the wolves eat the sheep, they eat the boy, and then they go into town and they eat the town people. That fable is non-trivial. So what am I trying to say?
That's where I'm going.
Bob is right in the sense that the overall trust level of the population of our American society has dropped way down. It's been going down for some time. Is it zero? Well, maybe for some people it is, but of course that's just not realistic. There are plenty of things that governments do and say that are true, and if you get that and utilize what you're told, it's beneficial to you. The idea that they lie about everything is, of course, simply against common sense. All right, but when trust drops below a certain level, people do get to the point where they just don't know. Their first instinct is just not to believe it, like the townspeople. And so the government cries wolf, people say screw you, the wolves come and eat everybody. And so here is I think the appropriate approach. There's plenty of truth that one can garnish from government sources and statements and politicians. It doesn't help if one is not paying attention, they don't follow the news, or they have not gotten a reasonable education. But if they have, there is truth there. there is truth that comes from the military, though the military fundamentally answers to the president, not directly to the American people. Right? It's also the case that lying is considered a fundamental tactical aspect of war, right? And intelligence. And we know that, right? Deception is almost key to the art of war. And we do a lot of wars. And so lying is built into our war fighting structure, of which we have one of the most powerful in the world. And of course, it's completely built into the intelligence structure. And we have 18 intelligence agencies. So you see, this is getting pretty wild and crazy. So taking extreme positions on this is not wise. Is it easy? No. But that's why you have activists. That's why you have journalists. Though there are people now that will not believe any journalist unless it's a journalist that shares their exact political ideals, which of course is another big mistake. And so you try to rely on people that you have some confidence in to interpret and point out when there's mistakes. That's why you have all these fact-checking things turning up, but people now don't believe the fact-checkers. Which is to say that if trust gets too low, it doesn't have to get to zero. It's like cold. The temperature doesn't have to drop to absolute zero to kill you. About 10 to 15 below is more than enough. Even just a few degrees above zero will kill you over a period of time. And so we are in a very dangerous situation where the temperature of trust in the United States is at a point where it could kill off the American dream and American society. And we have nobody to blame but ourselves. And by that, I mean the government and all of the people that elected that government, which is essentially all of the people, whether they voted or they chose not to vote. Because when you don't vote, you're electing somebody, whether you like it or not. And so I appreciate what Bob's saying, but I don't invite people to think that way. You've got to.
Can I stop
Yeah,
in
go
real
ahead.
quick? Just make sure I clarify what I'm arguing on this. I respect Robert Bigelow. I know we owe him a lot, and so I'm not trying to villainize him. But the issue is we're trying to use Congress right now to go in and help us to get this information.
That's right.
The issue with, and Ross Coulthart brought this up in the Good Trouble show as well, is many in the intelligence community think of politicians as temporary employees.
Sure.
He said as much.
Yeah.
And so the danger here, and I think you would agree with this, is where's the oversight? You know, it's like putting China in charge of the Human Rights, Commission. Where's the oversight? If Congress has the right and the duty to have oversight over these programs and they're being hidden from Congress, then who's doing the oversight? And, because people argue, and whether it's true or not, but people argue that people have been killed for this secret. People have had their lives destroyed for this secret. And so that's the point I'm hitting, is that it's not necessarily whether you trust the politicians or you don't trust the politicians, is how do we ever get this information and where's the oversight? That's my perspective. I'm not trying to villainize anybody, but I'm trying to point out what I see as the problem in the statement itself.
Well, let's start with this. One could say the only oversight for national structures like ours is God, if you believe in God. Where is the oversight to emperors and kings? Well, actually, it was God back in those days, and in some cases, not all cases, meaning that the most powerful kings in Europe, in many cases, were still subjugated to edicts from the Pope, because the Pope spoke directly to God, and God was the ultimate oversight. Yeah, but we're way past that. So we have complex societies that we have to have in order to be able to deal with the millions and hundreds of millions of people that we have wonderfully born into this world, and all the wonderful things that they want. And so we created a constitution way back. That's not a bad document. It needs to be fixed, but we're not in the business of fixing things anymore for now. And so it's not what the way that the Constitution was structured is not to somehow create this a tiered process of oversight over oversight over. You can't do that.
Can't do anything if you did that.
So what the Constitution did was create a tripartite government in which all three have a certain amount of oversight over each other. So you've got the executive, the legislative, and the judicial branch. And the judicial branch has the ability to put some restraints on the executive and the legislative branch. The legislative has the ability to put some restraints on the executive and the judicial and the president, the executive, and so forth. And so it's the system that essentially provides, quote, the control mechanisms. If people are looking for some uber entity that now has to it isn't there, and it's not going to be there. And if there was something that you assigned to have the oversight, very quickly, people wouldn't trust that, right? And so you have to have the trust in the system. And our system is not bad. It needs to be fixed, but the trust in the system is critical. In other words, it's more about trust than it is about oversight. Because theoretically, you can find a reason to distrust anybody and anything, including God. Okay, right? There are people that, in their lifetime, they're very religious, and at some point in their life, they just don't trust God anymore. They feel that God is not doing the right thing or whatever. I mean, so this is. I wish it was so simple. It's not. And so, in our system, the oversight is basically an aspect. It comes right out of the fundamental trust that people have in their government. If the trust is high, then they have confidence in what the government says. If the trust is low, they have no confidence in what the government says, even if what the government says are true, or the DOD says is true, right? Or politicians say are true. And so we have so much dysfunction now that the default position for more and more Americans every year is just don't trust anybody. And then what do you do? Okay, what do you do then? What in other words, are we going to go? We're going to use a different Congress? We'll just substitute the Spanish Conference Congress or the UK Parliament and substitute them? No, you can't do that. Right? Are we gonna assign our trust to certain websites on the internet that we kind of like, and we'll just assume whatever they say is true? No, that's not going to work. But people are doing that. They're kind of wandering around in the desert for 40 years, hoping that one day they'll cross the Rubicon of truth. No. What we have to do is fix the system that is undermining the trust so we can get back to a more trustful relationship and have a functional country. But we can't fix the system. Every effort to fix this system has failed over and over and over again. We cannot fix anything, right? Once in a while, we get a modest victory, but in a short amount of years, it's all undone. Right. That's why people are so anxious now, so frustrated. They're really upset. People are turning to every kind of mood-altering drug, thing, food, sugar, anything to try to deal with the anxiety they feel. And that's just in the United States. It's also true in many other parts of the world. This is not good. This is not going to end well. And so what has to happen is that, first and foremost, the government's got to get in the truth business. And as I've said many times, it's really not complicated. And let's use a simple relationship. Our relationship with our government is pretty important, but our relationship with our spouse is also pretty damn important. In fact, for many people, it's the most important relationship in their life. And if they've got kids, it gets even more important. And so you got two people, they have kids, they have a family, and they're very much dependent on each other. What happens when they start losing trust in each other, right? What happens when one of the two members of this partnership, of this marriage, starts lying, lies big time, all right? You know, the usual things, okay? And there are two ways that goes. The person doesn't know you're lying, and so that's going on until something finally happens and they learn, or the person knows you're lying, doesn't say anything, but just it sticks with you as you keep lying and over again, and they know that you're doing it, which is even more corrosive. That can lead to bad things happening, like stuff that turns up on, Nightline or whatever, those shows. And so if you've got a situation where one person in a marriage has completely lost trust in the other person, but you're not going to get a divorce, how do you fix that? How do you fix it? Right? I mean, do you make the person promise never to lie again? Does that fix it? Do you pay them money? Say, look, I'll pay you money if you tell me the truth. Will that fix it? No, those things aren't going to work. All right. One of the ways people try to fix that situation is the person that's lying says, I'm not lying very well. I need to lie better. I need to really work on my lying skills. So if I could lie better, the person will start believing me. Is that going to work? No. But believe it or not, politicians are doing that. So common sense. What is the only way that you can fix that relationship without simply getting a divorce, sharing the kids, whatever, moving on with your life? The person that's lying has got to tell the truth. A big truth would be nice. And it's got to tell it again, and another truth, and stop lying. And at some point, the confidence of the spouse will come back. That is the only way you fix that, unless you simply end the marriage or you kill each other. And it's exactly the same for government. The United States government's got to get in the truth business.
The key thing, though, here is the fact that what you're saying is true, is the idea that there are some within the government that don't like lying. They want to that's why we've got a divided group here. We've got some who want to keep the secret and some who want to release it. And I think I get where you're going with this is really it needs to be a change of heart for the people holding the secret. To some degree.
Not exactly. Look, I understand that there are people that lie and people that don't lie, but that's less important than what I'm actually referring to, which is institutional lying.
Right. Okay. So it's like the norm. Is that what you're saying?
If the Congress is lying as a collective institution, that is bad. If the Department of Defense is lying as an institution, that's bad. If the White House is lying as an institution, this is where the heavy damage is done. And that is what we have. And so when serious lies were put forward in order to facilitate the United States government going into a massive war or escalating a massive war in Southeast Asia that killed millions, that's institutional lying with unbelievably awful consequences. When lies were put forward that facilitated the ability for us to overreact to the 9/11 event and enter into multiple wars in Europe and the Middle East, also killing me. That's the kind of lying I am talking about. That's the kind of lying that literally can destroy a society. Not this senator lying or that senator lying, right? Or maybe even the president saying a few things. I'm talking about institutional lying. And the truth embargo is one of the most profound, extraordinary, and successful cases of institutional lying in the history of any government. For 77 years, the institution of the United States government and all of the sub-institutions to it, within it, have successfully able to maintain that there is no extraterrestrial issue here, presence here, even though every single year it's being seen and engaged, witnesses are coming forward worldwide. Unbelievable. Now that is, and here is where that gets even more toxic. Remember I talked about marriage situations where one is lying to the other? In one situation, the person is lying and the other person thinks they're telling the truth, and that goes on and on and on, but eventually, things get wobbly. The other case is when the person is lying. The other spouse has already figured this out, but has not said anything. maybe just to see how far their spouse is going to go. And so that person keeps lying and lying, and the person knows that they're lying, and they build up an intense hatred because it just reinforces their anger, which is a mistake. They should confront them, but they don't. And ultimately, it ends really badly. The truth embargo is exactly like that. Every year that's gone by since 47, more and more people have figured out that the government is lying through its teeth on this issue. More and more. Now it's in the tens of millions, if not 100. It could be 100 million. In other words, the government's lying. We know it. What can you do about it? Well, you can't get divorced. You could leave the country, right? You could go to another country. A lot of people are. Some people have left this country and found citizenship elsewhere, specifically because they can't stand how much the United States government lies about important matters, not just trivial stuff. But not that many have done that. So I'm talking about institutional lying. And so the way we're going to get trust back in government is if the institutions, the White House, the Department of Defense, the intelligence agencies, when they're dealing with matters that directly impact the American people as opposed to intelligence processes, and of course Congress, the parties, right? Not just the individual candidate, but the parties. In other words, you got 435 people running for Congress. Yeah, a couple of them are going to lie through their teeth. Okay. And people, sometimes you can figure that out and you kind of know it. And sometimes you catch them and you don't elect them. But when the parties are lying, the Democratic Party, that's institutional lying, the Republican Party. And so now the party, which has got to have almost half the members of Congress, if the party and its platform and its intentions as it's put forward, Democratic National Committee, Republican National Committee, if they're really lying and misrepresenting the American people, that is damaging. And so what I am saying is that I am hoping that post-disclosure, the institutions that have been operating this way and virtually undermining this society to the breaking point are going to realize that if they break it, they go down without the rest of us. Okay? It's not like, oh, the whole thing falls apart, but Congress will be just fine. The DOD will be just fine. No, none of them will be fine. It'll be chaos. It'll be a disaster. There will be dramatic consequences. And so I'm hoping post-disclosure, the DOD will make a commitment that, look, we're not lying to the American people anymore, and we're going to absolutely reduce secrecy to an absolute minimum. That the White House will realize that any lies it makes from the White House are particularly damaging, and they'll stop doing that, right? And then, of course, Congress and the parties will realize, look, if we don't start telling the truth pretty soon, nobody's going to believe anything. And, we're going to have a voter turnout of, 10%? Nobody will even come, which means that the lower the voter turnout, the more likely every manner of lunatic could probably get elected. That's what has to happen. It's institutional lying, which includes the truth embargo, that is virtually eating away at the body politic of the United States to the point where it's possibly going to kill it. That's what I'm talking about.
Isn't that, you mentioned earlier that if one of the spouses is lying and the other one knows about it, it's kind of the responsibility of the one who knows to go ahead and confront the one who's lying. Exactly. Isn't that what we're doing right now? Isn't that what your whole 28 years of what you've been doing? Isn't that what we're trying to do?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So I think I get your point, is it really doesn't matter who's lying to us until we fix the idea that we're being lied to.
Well, yeah, the activist movement is fundamentally a truth movement that is confronting the liar and letting the liars know, we know you're lying, okay, which makes it easier for us to put up with it. Now, some of the earlier lies that I talked about, these are one-offs, and that's a certain situation, okay? In other words, your spouse lies to you one time, and you know it. But it's one time. And then everything is fine, goes on for years. That's one thing. So the lies regarding Vietnam that got us in, they were kind of one-time lies. We went into the war. Eventually we learned they were lies, and then we move on, okay? It's not good, but it's not what the truth embargo is. The truth embargo, in order to maintain it, the government has to lie about it every single day. not just for weeks, but for years, not just for years, for decades. And so you've got a situation where the spouse is lying to the other spouse every single day. They get up and there's some lie they hear in the morning, in the afternoon, and then eventually somebody kills somebody. I mean, it's only a matter of time. And so that is the kind of situation we have. And I'm suggesting that if you're going to start a truth, if you're gonna enter a truth era and start rebuilding trust with the American public, you got to start big. You can't just start by not fudging the inflation numbers or something, right? Something like that, or the agricultural, whatever the hell. No, you got to start big. You got to make it clear that you have seen the light. Ending the truth embargo on the ET is about as big as it gets, right? There's no truth more powerful than this one. And if they end it and then they follow it up with truth upon truth upon truth, which is what the UAP Disclosure Act that Schumer tried to get passed back in last year, was intended to do. It was intended to, obviously, the truth embargo would have to be confirmed by the president, which would have happened after a hearing in the Senate. And then the Disclosure Act would have been fully operational, and we would have been seeing information coming out on a regular basis in an orderly way. And all of that would have been extremely reinforcing to the American people. Looks like you guys have finally gotten the message. You're telling us what we need to know. You're being honest with us, and in time the trust level would go up, and hopefully other institutions would go, telling the truth is kind of a cool thing. Let me give you an example. I'm not going to name names here, but I know of several politicians. It's not a matter of lying or truth per se, but I know several politicians who, because of their very partisan stance, get hate mail. Lots of it. All right. And they're not liked by a lot of people. But they embrace this nonpartisan issue. And they started coming out and saying, look, there's an extraterrestrial here. The government, the presence, their government is hiding this. And that is wrong. And we need that truth. You know what happened? All of a sudden, they started getting love mail. They started getting people that were praising them, even the ones that were not on their political side. And they were going, whoa, I like this. I like getting love mail. I like people telling me that's righteous, keep it up. And so they think, maybe I'll tell some more truth. Let me tell you, being an institutional liar and being a liar in general is no easy ride. It's awful. It's self-destructive. It's undermining your confidence and your worth. It leads to all manner of problems, including murder, financial ruin, name it. Lying is not a particularly favorable path to go. It has short-term benefits and awful long-term consequences. And so
in a way, maybe what we're doing is actually part of the healing process by them realizing that if they tell the truth, and they know what the consequences are lying, they know what the consequences of being partisan is, but if they can find middle of the road stuff, that's part of it. And I did want to segue over into, because you mentioned it, if you don't mind,
Sure.
And it'll segue into some of the stuff you want to do, but you mentioned the UAP Disclosure Act. And so I had just a little bit I wanted to talk about that and try to get your opinions on it. But I'm going to go ahead and start off by adding Robert Garcia.
Right.
He is a Democrat out of California. I almost hate the fact that we even use that terminology, but I've got some of this from my friend Matt Laszlo. And what he did was go ahead and my understanding from Matt is that Rounds and Schumer handed off the UAP Disclosure Act to Garcia, and Garcia went ahead and put out 3 amendments to it. Now, the thing I'm absolutely certain of is that there is somebody within the UAP community actively helping them write this stuff. Because I want to read this real quick. This is just page 3 of page 47 pages that Representative Garcia put out. And it's the qualifications for this review board. I think it's kind of like the Kennedy panel. It's the same principle.
Yeah.
But I want you to listen to it. It says that shall be impartial citizens none of whom shall have had any previous or current involvement with any legacy program or controlling authority relating to the collection, exploitation, or reverse engineering of technologies of unknown origin, or the examination of biological evidence of living or deceased human intelligence. And so when I read that, and I know it's an older version of Schumer is what my understanding is, but look at the wording in that. I highlighted certain words.
Sure.
Legacy program,
yeah.
Reverse engineering, living or deceased non-human intelligence, non-human biologics. And so to me, that's just fascinating. And I don't, that's not the language that Congress speaks. There's obviously an outside factor coming in and educating the congressman to be able to write this terminology in a way that that it sounds like it's almost written from someone within the community.
They could have gotten this language from Richard Dolan and a number of other researchers. So it didn't have to come from somebody sitting on a USAP or something. It could come just from the research community that has been carrying the water for decades.
Yeah.
Let me give you a quick sum on that. Look, 3 tranches of legislation, fantastic. Before the 4th tranche could get put together, David Grush came forward. Big deal, caused real issues. He was attacked right away, but he did get to give his testimony under oath. Things were up in the air, and as a result, Senator Schumer decided to make a bold move. He knew he needed to do something, and we couldn't just let the Grush testimony hang there as we moved into this election, right? Because he confirmed that there's non-human intelligence. David Grush did his own version of disclosure, but he's not the president, so it's not capital E disclosure. Schumer decided to make a bold move. So he puts together a bill that is essentially the entire package. Everything that we need to end the truth embargo ends when the president says there's ETs here, but in terms of ending the secrecy and getting the information out, this bill does it all. It provided the powers, it provided the means, it provided the process, which included a review board. And he put it out there, even through an eminent domain, just to test the waters, maybe as a bargaining chip. What happened next is there was huge pushback, enough pushback from the appropriate people that they gutted all the powers in the bill, but left the essence of the bill, a little compromise. A lot of disappointment there, but that's what happened. All right. Schumer then goes into the Senate along with Rounds and reads into the record that, no, we're not done with this yet. Yeah, that's a disappointment. It's a setback, but we're going to continue, meaning we're going to put this out again. And that sent more panic through the opponents of ending the truth embargo, the proponents of the truth embargo, and those opposed to ending it. And so they took an even bolder and very, very stupid move and put out a false study that they got Sean Kirkpatrick to sign off on, basically saying there's nothing to this, nothing to see here, trying to pull off what they did with the Condon Report 69. It's an incredible disgrace, an embarrassment. The DOD should be ashamed of itself. And of course, the internet has already shredded it. So that happened. Okay. And so then what next? Well, what's next is Robert Garcia, in order to basically let the DOD know that the Congress is not buying any of this crap. By the way, the Republicans in the House that are pushing for disclosure and saying outright we have ETs here, like Bassett, didn't buy that report either. But Garcia comes up and says, just to put a shot across their bow, just reintroduces a bill that includes one of the things that was stripped out of the Schumer bill. It's not the whole thing. He just wanted to get something back in play. So he put this amendment in which he's trying to at least get the presidential review panel agreed to. But he knew there was no chance. And Mike Johnson has already killed it. It's done. It's dead.
That's what I was going to
get to. Okay. And Mike is basically saying, well, if Tim Burchett comes up with a clean bill that does whatever the hell, it's all BS. And so that's it. But nevertheless, what you're seeing is fine. Yeah. Push and then a push back and a push and a push back. But what people need to understand is the disclosure, the political engagement of the disclosure process is fully underway. It will never stop. It is not going to be reversed. It is going forward, right? In fact, the disclosure process itself is at a place that it cannot be stopped and can't be reversed. And there's something happening almost every month that advances that. Now, I just put out 2 links recently that to me really show make this point very powerfully. And I'm going to show them to you now. But first, what I'm going to do is I want to bring up another share file. I'm going to bring that up now. Just give me a second. And I think I can find it. One moment. Let's see. I'm going to do this, SALT. And let's see if that comes up. Yeah, there it is. Okay. Okay. So get that up. So I'm coming back here. I'm going to share some things with you. Let me know if it's going okay, bandwidth wise. So here we go. Here's the first thing I'm going to share. And it is this. Okay. What is this? This is the Wikipedia page for Skybridge Capital. Okay. What the hell is that all about? Skybridge Capital is a global investment firm based in New York City, United States. It is run by founder Anthony Scaramucci. Remember him? Brett S. Messing and Raymond Nolte. Skybridge produces the Skybridge Alternative Conference, or SALT Conference, a capital introduction convention, in addition to its annual flagship events in Vegas, Singapore, Tokyo, and Abu Dhabi. As of March 2023, Skybridge assets had dwindled to about $2 billion from a peak of $9 billion. So what is this? What's the point I'm making here? The point I'm making here is that the SALT conference is a big deal. It is attended to and watched by very powerful people in the financial world. All right. It is non-trivial. It is mainstream. Okay. And so they've been having them for a while. Okay. Why am I bringing this up? Here's the first reason. At the 2023, when they hold their SALT conference, they bring in certain speakers, but they're not confined to just financial stuff. They will bring in something they consider very important. Okay. And in the 2023 SALT conference, all right, the person they brought in to speak was Gary Nolan, the founder of Soul Foundation, one of the founders of the UAP Disclosure Fund, I'm pretty sure. Right. And someone who was an initial member of the To the Stars Academy of Arts and Sciences. Right. And who's been speaking out publicly. And this is a glimpse of what took place at that conference back in the summer of 2023.
I don't have it to share it yet. It hasn't gone to me. Like before, it came onto my screen. So it's not shared it to me yet.
It's not shared yet? Okay, hang on.
I haven't received it.
Let me know when it's shared.
Okay, I can do that. It showed up right away the last time you did it when we were, talking before we went live.
Okay, hang on. All right, let me pause it. Okay. So I'm coming back here. I'm going to come back to StreamYard. Okay. I'm going to stop sharing. How do I stop sharing? Come here. Cancel. Okay. And I'm bringing it back up. When I brought up the Skybridge Wikipedia page, you saw that, correct?
No.
Oh, you didn't see the Skybridge
No, I thought you were just reading it. No, that didn't show up either.
All right, let me try again.
Perfectly when we were talking earlier. It's just technology for you.
Yeah, it is what it is. All right, so let's go. Present, share screen. Okay. Share screen. Okay. And then I go ahead and I'm going to pick, where's the Skybridge? It should be here. I think I know what I did.
Yeah. So you share screen and then I have to put it on stage.
I think I clicked the wrong thing. Okay. I think I know what I did. Hang on a second. I'm going to fix this. 1 second. I know exactly what I did. Okay. I'm going to bring this up. All right. Then I'm going to go back to here and I'm going to go here. Okay. And I'm going to share it. Okay.
Hey, there it is. There it is. Let me
All right, so this is the Wikipedia page regarding Skybridge and the SALT conference. I talked about that, folks. So here it is, just confirming it. Okay. Now I'm going to go back and share you something from the 2023 SALT conference in New York, summer of 2023. Let's do that. One moment. I'm going to go here, present, share, and bingo. And
It's
let's
not here
see
yet.
how this goes.
Oh, there it is. Okay. Now
Okay.
I got it. Stage. All right. I'll
And
go
here we
ahead.
go.
Professor in the Department of Pathology. If you had to assign a probability to that statement that you believe extraterrestrial intelligence has visited this planet, what probability would you assign? 100%.
100%. Just unbelievable.
I don't know. I'm assuming you were done with that one. I was going.
No,
to
no,
late
keep going.
files.
Keep
Huh?
going. Not done.
That's what you wanted to share, right? Or do you want the LATO files and all that on?
Yes, let's keep going.
Okay.
Could you
what I was
give a
trying to
little
figure
bit of your background? Sure. So I'm a professor in the Department of Pathology at Stanford. The primary research work in my lab is cancer immunology, virology. We also do a lot of work in biothreat. So we've worked with Ebola, Zika, COVID when it was a big problem. Primarily the work in my lab is the development of instrumentation and algorithms to understand the complexity of the immune system in cancer. And in the process of doing that, we've created any of a number of technologies, which we spun out into companies. It's now 9 companies. 2 of them are on NASDAQ. And these immunology instruments are used pretty much around the world in almost any advanced immunology analysis and work.
Okay, so he's world famous and he's created a ton of amazing technology, really, with cancer and immunology.
Watch what protein shakes do to your body.
Hang on.
This is a protein shake. You've
The
got almond
downside
butter.
of this. Okay.
Understood. And I'm curious, do you believe that extraterrestrial intelligence has visited planet Earth? I think you can go a step further. It hasn't just visited, it's been here a long time and it's still here. And it has basically.
Okay. So what do we have here? First of all, notice how he asked him to give his credentials. That's not necessarily something you do in that situation, but he wanted to make everybody know this man is not just anybody. He's an extraordinary person. I don't know if he mentioned his Nobel Prize nomination. Okay. And so he says 100%, and they've been here. That was a year ago. All right. Now, in the interim, since he was on that program, you had the bill come forward, right? Schumer's effort to get it done. You had the gutting of that bill by certain members of Congress and the defense contractors. Okay. You had the Aero study, complete bogus Aero study report come out. All right. Which is a complete lie. And so forth. And then you had another SALT conference. So what's the situation with that? Well, let's take a look at that. Coming up right here, bingo and bingo, and listen carefully.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming this evening. I'm glad that we are the final talk of this year's SALT event. And I'm very excited to discuss what I consider to be one of the most consequential questions of our lifetime, which is, are we alone in the universe? And I'm very lucky to have Carl Nell here joining me for this conversation. Carl, thank you so much for coming. And Anthony and AJ over at SALT, thank you so much for hosting this.
And let me point out that Carl Nell was not the original speaker. They were going to have David Grush. He canceled at the last minute. We don't know why. It could have been additional threats he was getting. And then Carl stepped in to fill in, which is fine. Both of them would have been incredible. Possibly Carl Nell's presence even more important.
So Carl, maybe to begin, can you share a little bit about your background, who you are, and perhaps why people should care what you say?
Sure. Well, thanks, Alex. It's a pleasure and honor to be here. It's a fantastic event, and I'm glad to see a large bunch of folks that stuck it out to the end for this talk. So I was fortunate. I had a 4-year ROTC scholarship to Penn. I graduated with a degree in electrical engineering. The Army sent me overseas to do signal corps engineering projects. So I did a lot of strategic comm projects in Europe. I ended up working in Army Space Command. I commanded a satellite ground station, war trace to the Joint Chiefs. I spent some time at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. The Army ultimately sent me to get a master's in mechanical engineering, a master's in strategic studies, graduate work in computer science. I was on track to stay in, but I decided that I wanted to pursue more of a technical career. So I got out and ended up working at Bell Labs, which was a fantastic place. Unfortunately, I was there during the trivestiture that folks may be familiar with, where the company got split up. I left Bell Labs and ended up working in Lockheed Missiles and Space. I worked at Northrop Grumman. I've ran strategic technology programs in the defense industry, worked for a lot of the 3-letter agencies, ultimately was a deputy chief of staff or deputy CTO for a $2 billion company. I was a vice president general manager of a Northern Virginia-based R&D firm. I stayed in the military, in the reserve. I commanded at every grade level through brigade. I was fortunate to stand up the Army's newest expeditionary MI brigade. I was the deputy chief of staff for a combatant command. Ultimately, this experience sort of combined to give me the opportunity to come in and advise Army Futures Command, the largest reorganization in the Army Reserve since really 1973, on how the Army could be more effective. And my last assignment was involved with the UAP task force, which maybe is the most apropos for this discussion.
And so, Carl, here's the $1 million question. Do you believe that a higher form of non-human intelligence has visited this planet?
Right. So non-human intelligence exists. Non-human intelligence has been interacting with humanity. This interaction is not new, and it's been ongoing. And there are unelected people in the government that are aware of that.
And so, Carl, that is quite a bold statement. I'm wondering, and I'm curious, how confident are you that that is true?
There's zero doubt.
Okay, so let's parse this a little bit. Just like in the 2023 SALT, when Nolan was given opportunity to go with his credentials, okay, and he did. They went even further this time, because it's very rare in a situation like that, when you have a speaker that's going to come on, that they run through virtually their entire resume, every highlight of their career, ba-boom, ba-boom, ba-boom. It's considered bad form, right? It's a little too much, but that was intentional. They wanted him to do that. Why? Because and by the way, if you may recall what he said when he asked that question, can you please tell us something about your background so people would care what you were about to say? And so he runs to this extraordinary background, and then boom, what does he say? You know, they are here. There is no doubt. So what you're seeing here, when you've got investment funds with billions of dollars that are holding conferences watched by people with even more billions of dollars, that are putting people on like that and saying there's extraterrestrials here. This is institutional pushback against the nonsense that is coming out of the DOD and the last gasp of those people who somehow think the truth embargo is more important than everything else on this planet, and refuse to give up on it. And so this is another reason why the truth embargo cannot last. It simply cannot be sustained. You've got Nobel Prize winners setting up UAP disclosure funds, foundations. You've got Danny Sheehan, one of the great legal justice activists of the 20th and 21st century, that has already gotten substantial funding for a brand new think tank, New Paradigm Institute, which has got all kinds of things going on that's going to raise millions more. And so the message has still not quite gotten to the Department of Defense and certain members of Congress that you've lost. They just don't know it yet. It's like the person that's lost the chess game and keeps just staring at it because they can't believe they've been mated, and they're hoping that the longer they look at the board, maybe they'll see that no, they're not, and they have a move left. They don't. And so this is the point I wanted to get across here. The question is, what is the next step?
Can I stop you for a second? Because
Absolutely.
you just hit the perfect spot for me to ask this question. I forgot to ask it earlier, and then you can go on to what you were doing, because you said basically they've lost, but they just don't know it yet. And so I had someone give me this question. It was from a friend named Stephen Barnard, and he wanted to know if you still feel we are up by 4 with 2 outs in the bottom of the ninth. Is that how you feel at this time?
Yeah. And so maybe even 5 runs. In other words, can the government come up with 6 runs and win the game? I just don't think so. However, it's my concern. Well, look, it's a good question. And I got to tell you, I'm in a constant state of flux on this because things have gotten even more complicated. And I'm not surprised. I always knew that the end of the truth embargo was going to be complicated, difficult, unpredictable, maybe even chaotic, with pushback. I always knew that, but I knew that ultimately we'd prevail. And so what has happened? Here's what's happened. Because of a range of circumstances beyond the control of, at least in near term, beyond the control of Congress, the president, and anybody else, things have gotten delayed and pushed back. The world is a dangerous place, and there's a lot of crap going on, some of which is connected to the institutional lying that I was talking about, and the fact that we can't fix anything because there's no trust. And that is not surprisingly leading to very bad things happening, which in then turns delay the ability to get something done right. And so the disclosure process has been pushed further forward and further back, and further back. And it's getting shoved into the political campaigns to a degree that I had hoped would not happen. And so where we are now is to simplify it, is this. There's complete justification for the major hearing, like the Nixon hearing, like the Iran-Contra hearing, like any of these major hearings, the McCarthy hearing, that was absolutely essential in order to resolve a very important development and issue and controversy in American society. We have total justification for holding that hearing. It clearly needs to be in the Senate Intel Committee. There's 1 or 2 other possibilities, but they are deep seconds to the Intel Committee. There are plenty of witnesses like David Grush's ready to testify. That testimony will be watched by millions, and it will blow the truth embargo wide open. And then the president can then come forward almost immediately in a nonpartisan way and say, look, I'm pretty convinced. My aides are, my top people are, and we're going to start getting information to you, and we're going to find out. You're going to find out what's going on. That's disclosure, capital D. That's the event. So there's more than justification for it. Unfortunately, the world affairs, which are putting huge stress on the White House, okay, and the political campaign, which is huge stress on the Congress, of which 475 people are going to be up for election here. In the way we run business, the way we elect people here, it's going to cost several $billion for them to run for this office that pays about $200,000 a year, right? And then the whole political process is dysfunctional. It's a sausage machine, and everybody's so risk averse because they realize, my God, it costs $20 million for me to run this race and win the Senate seat. I can't do anything dangerous. I can't say this. I can't say that. I can risk being primaried, whatever the hell. It's all risk averse. At a time when we cannot afford that, we've got to have decisive action. And so that hearing has not been held. And so now we're moving into the campaign for real. And by for real, I mean a presidential debate, which is going to come up tomorrow. And that debate is going to be very likely the first time that the ET question is ever asked in a presidential debate. The only other example was in a primary debate in 2007, when the question was brought up and handled pretty poorly by people that obviously were scared to death of the issue. And even though a number of the people on the candidates know the ET presence is real, That was in 2007 in a Democratic primary debate. This will be the first time likely it's going to happen. And given the special circumstances of this particular election and the candidates, I have no idea how this is going to go down. It could go well, it could go unbelievably bad. I just don't know. But I am fundamentally afraid of one thing, that starting tomorrow, really for the first time in 77 years, the presence of extraterrestrials and the need to tell that to the American and the world's people is going to be politicized, finally, for the first time. And that is not something anybody should want. Right. It's very concerning to me. If this gets politicized, it could get really messy and really ugly. And so that is my concern. If that happens, again, there's going to be more Grushes coming forward. There's going to be more Nels coming forward, Nolan's coming forward. I mean, there's going to be more people in Congress coming out and saying there's ET presence. But the ability to finally get the damn thing done so the president can come forward may get undermined. And we're going to go into this actual election in November with this issue kind of hanging out there in space over everybody's head, and nobody knows what the hell they're doing. And it's going to be a historical fiasco. And we've already had all the historical fiascos, at least as far as the United States is concerned, that we really need and want. We don't need any more. All right. We're the most powerful nation in the world. We're the most economically powerful nation in the world. We have enough nuclear weapons to destroy every other country on the planet, right? We cannot continue to screw up over and over and over again and make monumental mistakes, tell monumental lies, and not fix anything. And so for me, my life's work right now is coming to kind of a head. And it's not about me. I'm just saying that, like, I'm experiencing anxiety for a legitimate reason. And so all I can say, folks, is, I've done hundreds of podcasts to try to explain what's happening since 2017. Most of you know a lot about it. If you go to my website, paradigmresearchgroup.org, and you go to resources and you go to the print media archive, you can read 2,000 articles. Oh, more than that. You can read like 4,000 to 5,000 articles, legitimate mainstream articles about all of this that we're talking about since 2017. It's all been written up in the articles. It's all there. You don't have to go find some secret documents in the basement of the Pentagon. The press is actually covering the issue. The stigma's gone. And so everything we're talking about, stuff like Nolan coming forward and Nell and all that stuff, it's all been written up by the press. It's right there. And so go and read it. And then
can you repeat that again so everybody hears it clearly where to go?
Yeah, Paradigm Research Group, right? Okay. My site, .org. And then under resources in the menu, you hover and it drops down, could drop on down to print media archive. I just loaded up another 150 articles and then go punch through to the archive. And there's I think 700 and some already logged in this year and 1,800 last year. And these are articles, they're not picked at random. These are articles in the mainstream press, professional press, triaged out of 3 times as many. In other words, there's 3 times as many little things popping up here and there and YouTube videos or whatever. I'm not including those. I'm focusing on mainstream press, English language worldwide, legitimate stuff. Not everybody's a New York Times. That doesn't mean it's not legitimate journalism. And so just in the last 18 months rather, 2,600 articles directly referring to what we're talking about have been published across the English language world. And yet the Pentagon thinks that they can put out one stupid ass report and force somebody, I hope they didn't force them against his will, they might have, to sign off on it and thus probably disgrace their legacy forever. They think they can get away with that. No, they can't. All they're doing is making it worse. And so my message, and we can finish with this, is this. Danny Sheehan and New Paradigm Institute is making a huge push to get a question about the ET issue. It's appropriate. The question they want is a relatively reasonable question, and it is, ask the candidates if they support the UAP Disclosure Act that was passed. in the NDA bill and signed last December. Relatively safe for both candidates. And they're pushing for that. Fine. But you see, the CNN moderators, they can ask any damn thing they want. And Lord knows what question they will ask. They might ask, candidate so-and-so, do you believe what Major David Grush testified to the House, that we have non-human tech and non-human bodies? And then the other candidate gets asked the same question. How that's going to go, I don't know. It could be that what happens tomorrow may actually accelerate the process. Warner will hold a hearing right away. Or it could turn it into political chaos. Nobody believing anybody, everybody screaming their head off. I don't know. But I will sure be watching. Okay. And so to the extent that you can, going to the New Paradigm Institute website, where they provide the means to continue to contact all the members of Congress, your members of Congress. And at paradigmresearchgroup.org, I have a project up there called ShiftStorm, where it shows you how to tweet as many messages as you want, tag tweet to 3 key people involved in the Senate Intel Committee decision to hold that hearing. And they are Marco Rubio, Senator Schumer, and Senator Warner. And so you can just rain down tag tweets. Now, what do I mean? It's not like an email, but and you can send emails, but it's hard to do because if you're not in their state or their district, that email won't go through. But they're all on Twitter. And so anytime you put a message in that is at Senator Schumer, at Marco Rubio, whatever their handle is, and then you put in, we want you to do this, we want you to hold the hearings, it loads up their notification box. And those notification boxes are monitored by their staff. And so if 1,000 messages come in, tweet messages come into that box, they're going to call up their boss and say, look, you need to look at this. Because a whole lot of people are tag tweeting you about the fact that they want those hearings. So I recommend people do that and pay attention and try to be reasonable as things move forward. If your position is nobody tells the truth anymore at all, you're not going to believe anybody unless it's a favorite YouTuber that you like, then you're not going to be able to follow this. You're not going to be able to engage it, right? And if you're going to hyper politicize it, meaning unless it comes from this politician of that party, I don't believe it. I believe it, but if it doesn't, I don't believe it, right? That's not the way the world works. Right. If a supernova goes off nearby and a Democrat says a supernova happened, you say, no, it didn't, because you're a Democrat, or vice versa, you're in a hole. You need to get out of that hole. We got to stop politicizing everything. Right. Because it's just undermining the social contract and taking this country further down. And we're not that far from bottom. So on a positive note, I just want to say this. There's some heroes out there that are laying it on the line. And that's Nolan, Danny Sheehan, Mellon, Elizondo, all right, Carl Nell, Robert Bigelow, who went on 60 Minutes and says, there's extraterrestrials here, right? Tim Burchett, who's gone in front of the cameras repeating and says, there's extraterrestrials here. And others in the House that are pushing this issue, there are plenty of heroes lining up, and there's a whole bunch of heroes ready to testify under oath and before the world if the Senate Intel Committee will just call them in, put them in that chair, and have them hold up their right hand and take an oath. Okay. And I think that's still going to happen. So I'm going to leave things on a positive note.
Okay. All right. Well, I did want to cover a couple more things. How much time do you have? I know you have to leave.
Where are we talking about? 126? No. Is it 126? I think it is. Yeah.
Yeah, 118.
I got about 15, 20 minutes. Tops.
Okay. All right. Well, I want to ask you about, we'll cover this real quick, and then we'll get into contact at sea. We'll leave contact in the desert out, so I don't think we have enough time to cover it all. But this is from Matt Ascapo, and this, I'm gathering this is not going to be the hearing that you're hoping for because it's probably the House Oversight Committee.
Yeah.
But he was asking Burchett about David Grush's list of cooperative and hostile witnesses. And he's basically, Matt, saying, what did you do with that? And Burchett responds, that'll be part of the next hearing, some of those folks, I'm afraid to give out too many names because, as you know, what happened the last time, we had like 12 people that were coming in. We ended up with 3. And
Right.
and so there's clearly a hearing coming in the House. We don't know when it is. Somebody put on X that it was going to be at the end of August, but they didn't even do their research, realizing that Congress is out in August. And so that was a mistake. But
Yes.
so is this going to help us or not? Burchett also, by the way, was the one who didn't think, Garcia's or Schumer's UAP Disclosure Act is a good idea because it's not going anywhere. It's just bureaucracy is the way he looked at it. But do you think this hearing can help? I mean, if it has to be the Intelligence Committee that actually leads it, is this going to help, or is it just a drop of water in a bucket or in an ocean? What are we talking about here?
Well, first of all, just because a bill doesn't get passed doesn't mean it doesn't have significant impact. Schumer put that bill up on a legislative website, the Senate site, on I think July 27th of last year. It sat there for months being read by people all over the world. Wow. So it was basically a giant message to the entire world. This is what I want to do. The fact that the bill didn't get passed means it's not going to happen yet. But the idea that it's a waste of time, no, it's not. That's okay. That's all right. Well, first of all, I should mention that my intel is that Senator Warner does want to have a hearing. Okay. But, and this comes under the risk averse thing that I was talking about earlier, he doesn't want to have it unless he can get firsthand, hands-on people in there. In other words, people that have been actually working on that ET tech, right? Got the screwdriver, got the wrench, they're in there working on it. He wants the firsthand people, the people that like those that talk, that eventually provided that information to Grush that set him off on his path there. I think it's a mistake. You don't need that level. We've got firsthand witnesses to the nuclear shutdowns. I mean, they were at the friggin' base, for crying out loud. Right. And there's probably some of the security guys that were up there when the craft was hovering over the ICBM facility that probably would come in if they were contacted and given, so forth. But whatever. There's enough witnesses to do it. However, risk averse. And unfortunately, my understanding is this, that the firsthand people, the ones that are in the USAPs, the programs that theoretically you can't even acknowledge exist, though that doesn't mean that people don't know, some people don't know, are not confident that the witness, and I'm saying witness protection legislation is strong enough yet.
Right.
And so they're afraid to come forward, which kind of creates an impasse. All right. I'm thinking have the hearing, get disclosure, pass the witness protection stuff, which will be far easier to do. And then they'll be able to come forward in the post-disclosure world. Mm-hmm. But again, I'm not chairman of the Intel Committee. So nobody's going to listen to me. The point is that is kind of the situation. And so any hearing is helpful. And so you get an idea of how complicated this is. So you've got a Democratic chairman of the Intel Committee in the Senate trying to make a decision on this. You've got key Republican members of an oversight committee in the House trying to make a decision on this. Both of them are having to deal with the witness issues and who can come forward and who can't. I would be shocked if there was any attempt to subpoena anyone. I think that would be a very big mistake. I don't think they're going to do that. That doesn't help. But every day that goes by, more happens, more press, more people coming forward, like Nell came forward just a while back. You're going to see more of that. And so it's every day that goes by, it's more and more likely that witnesses who are reluctant now are willing to come forward, unless something draconian happens, and all of a sudden the DOD suddenly comes forward with some sort of lawsuit, or ask the president to put some witnesses on trial as traitors or whatever the hell. I mean, that would be a stupidity of such a colossal proportion that I think is even beyond the DOD's willingness. But short of that, it's only going to get easier. And so that's kind of the dynamic that's going on. But any hearing will help right now. It's important, not important, but it's helpful that that the hearings in the House are nonpartisan, led by Republicans, and the hearings and the activities, the legislation that's coming out of the Senate is essentially nonpartisan, led by a Democrat, right, in terms of chair. So we still have a nonpartisan situation that we can advance.
Right.
And so I'm happy with that. However, tomorrow is another matter. We're in political waters now that I didn't even know existed, right? You know, and we're trying to stay afloat. And some of us are swimming better than others. So I'm just holding my breath, folks, and we'll see what happens tomorrow. And I'm sure a lot of podcasters are going to call me afterwards and go, Steve, I need you to come on and talk about this. I'm going to be traveling for a few days. So that's a good thing, because I'm going to need some time to digest whatever the hell happens. But a lot of people are going to be watching. I hope there's at least 70 million people watching this debate tomorrow, because whatever happens, it needs to happen in front of the people. It needs to be transparent. I don't want everybody learning about it third hand from three different social media platforms. I want them to watch it so that when we address it, they can understand what we're trying to convey.
A couple more things, because we want to get to Contact at Sea. But before this, I thought this was an important question. Dragonfire asked about how things are going with the Hollywood Disclosure Alliance. How do you feel it's progressing?
Hollywood Disclosure Alliance is doing very well. It was started with virtually no money. All the front money was put up by myself and co-founder Dan Harari, and we made some progress. But so much chaos has been going on, so much pressure, that we really couldn't get the funding going soon enough. While there is a GoFundMe up, you can find it at Hollywood Disclosure Alliance, and there's a donation page at hollywooddisclosurealliance.org. And yes, it is a fully filed 501c3. It's all tax deductible. But we have instituted a membership program for now, in which all of the 150 members are being asked to put up $150 a year for being part of this very significant networking entity, nonprofit networking entity that's already creating projects for people and making things happen. And so any new members that come in are going to be subject to that. I think they have until September 1. But I think there's a Kickstarter funder out there, somebody, because we know there are people out there with huge sums of money that donate to issues all the time. And I think there's somebody out there that's going to see how important the Hollywood Disclosure Alliance is. It's helping to network with the UAP community, with the content creating community that's made all these all these alien films, hundreds of them, to come together, have the resources to put out really high production value content, not only now, but also post-disclosure, when that content is going to be desperately needed by the entire world. And it's working, and it's really righteous. And I think somebody's going to drop $50,000, $100,000 on us, and then we're going to really take off, and we'll probably pull the membership requirement dues out. But until then, that's in place. And so if you go to hollywooddisclosurealliance.org, you can easily see who's involved, what the mission statement is, and I can tell you it is helping things happen. The HDA doesn't make money from projects. It just helps people get together to create projects, and they benefit. All right. It's a networking nonprofit bringing people together that have been separated by the truth embargo for decades. All right. So that's kind of where that's at. And anybody that has what they think is a very righteous, either a Hollywood member, meaning film industry, content industry, or a UAP member, meaning somebody that's a researcher, activist, journalist, documentarian, whatever, even a contactee, whatever witness, want to refer them to me or to Dan Harari, feel free. We'll put it by the executive committee, and we may very well add them as a member to the HDA.
You mentioned that name again, Daniel Harari.
Right.
And I'm so excited. He's going to be coming on the podcast on July 17th at 1 p.m. Pacific. So that's awesome. Let's get to the last thing, though. This is, an unbelievable cast. This is a cruise that's going to take off from Seattle. It's going to Alaska, I believe, British Columbia. It's called Contact at Sea. And I really love the fact that the theme of it is, or subtitle anyway, is The Truth is Out There. And I love the homage that it gives to the X-Files.
Does that image have the speakers underneath it, or is that just a
I have
standalone?
some of them written down. Let me go ahead and list a few of them. I didn't write them all down. I couldn't get the screen to save them all. It was too much. But I'll just mention the top names in my mind.
In our world, in our field, because there's a number of subject areas or areas of interest. It's not just UAP. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's paranormal. But it had like Steve Bassett's in it. Jimmy Church is going to be in it. Daniel Sheehan, Grant Cameron, Margie Kay, who's been on this podcast, Richard Doty, and Daryl Sims, just to name a few. And I think there's probably 25 at least, 25 minimum of speakers and different. Well, going to have different sessions.
Yeah, let me add Paul Hynek, the son of J. Allen Hynek, is going to be there. Michael Schratt is going to be there. So the UAP issue is very well represented. I'm hoping to get some panels together, Q&As and stuff like that. We'll see. And look, there's been a lot of interest in it. A lot of bookings have happened. If someone is able to get a booking and they put my name in as someone had told them about it, it provides some income for the speaker. That's how they do it. But I know that they're heavily booked, but they're I think the interior cabins may be sold out at this point. However, some of them open up. There's a lot of them, and as they open up, the conference grabs them. And so, if you want to get one of these, which is obviously much less expensive, you want to get an ocean view suite. Let me tell you, it's some big bucks. So you need to keep checking in with Divine Travels and that website, contactatSea.com. Because those interior suites could open at any time. There's still 2 months, and you just keep checking in and pick one off, and you can get the reasonable option in terms of cost. And again, if you do sign up, when you get to that sign up sheet, tell them Steve sent you, and that will help Paradigm Resource Group.
Absolutely, and that's going to be between September 6th and September 13th. And I want to say, for those of you that might be worried about getting seasick, my understanding is that the Ovation of the Sea is the largest ship in the Pacific. And so the odds of getting seasick on a ship that big are very remote.
Well, all of the big ones, they have the special technology on there that really prevents that. You got to have some serious action in the ocean. But the Ovation is massive. But something else. A number of people have told me this, and I believe it. I've never been on a cruise. I went to the Philippines on a naval transport when I was like 11. I don't think that was a cruise, so I did learn how to play bridge. The point is that this is one of the most beautiful cruises in the world. Why? Because it goes up the straits between Seattle and Anchorage, and so you have got these unbelievable views on both sides of the boat, not just one side of the boat. Right. And so wherever you're looking, you're going by these unbelievable scenery in that strait. Plus, the waters are very calm. Obviously, the air is invigorating and pure. And some people think it's one of the absolute best cruises you can go on. And I'm just thrilled that I'll be able to go on my first cruise and have all I can eat for 6 days. I'm not going to eat for at least 48 hours prior to leaving for Seattle. So that's it. Again, you have to keep checking in if you want to get one of some of the interior cabins, because they grab them when they open up. There's been a lot of demand. It's a very popular boat. So hopefully as many can join us as possible.
Well, I wanted to thank you, Steve, for coming back on. I'm telling you what, you're always the highest viewed podcast that I have on here. You still have number 1 spot, I think 2 and 3. I think it was the one from the Phoenix Light, number 4. So anyway, I want to thank you for it. I want to also just mention to everyone else that if you haven't subscribed to this channel, I'm asking you to do it. Just have incredible guests like Steve have come on it, and many, many others. And it's like I said, somewhat of a newer channel. I've been doing this with guests for about 7 months. The channel's been in existence for a little bit over a year, but it's really growing fast. But I need your help. I need your subscription to be able to help this church, this channel, to grow and continue.
Freudian spirit, right? The Church of the UAP.
There you go. My new
okay.
Anyway, everyone have a great day, and I appreciate you for watching. And Steve will have you back on again. You always have exciting news for us. Thank you.
Ad Astra.